Howdy folks, hope you all had a great weekend. Welcome back to another episode of Mingles with Jingles, complete with brand new Sammy Hallam cover artwork. This time featuring Goddammit Billy, Rita and the cats, as well as myself and Boo. I should probably also mention, since nothing ever seems to happen unless I do mention it in an episode of Mingles with Jingles, that Sammy has also designed a huge range of Jingles merchandise, available at the Salt Mine store in the link down below. It's in the link of every video, but for some reason, unless I actually pimp it out and Mingles with Jingles, nobody ever seems to realise that it's there. So anyway, go and check it out. You never know. You might see something you like the look of. So anyway, what's been going on this week? Well, Christmas is fast approaching. The holiday season is almost upon us. And while I don't really celebrate Christmas, I definitely look forward to my annual 2-week Christmas break. This year, I was invited to Wargaming Fest in Moscow. Now, this isn't the first time I've been invited to Wargaming Fest, and I understand other Wargaming title community contributors have attended previously. I'm pretty sure Quickie Baby did a live stream from there at one point, either last year or the year before, or possibly both. But 2 years ago, when I was first invited to attend Wargaming Fest, unfortunately it kind of clashed a little bit with EpicCon, a convention that I attended in Frankfurt in Germany. It's not that they were both on the same dates, but the problem was there wasn't enough time for me to get back from Germany, get to the visa office, hand over my passport with the visa application, and then get the visa and passport back in time to go to the Moscow Expo Centre for Wargaming Fest. It takes a couple of weeks to get your visa processed, unless you're prepared to pay a ridiculous amount of money to fast-track the visa. So I just wasn't able to attend in 2016. Well, this year I've been invited to go back again, and this time there aren't any conflicts, and they did give me plenty of notice. But I really just can't be bothered. I realise that sounds terrible for more than one reason. I'm not trying to put Wargaming Fest down. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic event. I mean, I've been to more than a couple of Wargaming shows. They definitely know how to put on a good show. I'm sure it's going to be jam-packed full of things to do and things to see, and is going to be a great event if you speak Russian. And I don't speak Russian. Because, well, here's the thing. I mean, it's not like Gamescom. Yes, Gamescom is a German event. But it's actually more like a European event. And when you get people coming from all over Europe, in fact from all over the world to attend your event, generally speaking, most of the presentations, if they're not in German, they're in English, or they're in German and English. Some are just in German, but generally speaking, as long as you can speak or understand English, you can understand what's going on at Gamescom just fine. That's not the case at Wargaming Fest. It's in the heart of Russia. The audience is Russian. All of the presentations are in Russian. All of the games are in Russian. Oh, hang on a minute, Jingles. Surely you've played a Wargaming title or two before. Does it really matter if the user interface is in Russian? You know what? You'd be surprised. There have been a couple of times in the past where I've patched either World of Tanks or World of Warships, and for some reason, post-patch, the UI has defaulted back to Russian. And I hadn't noticed until I actually got into the game. And bloody hell, it was a struggle. I mean, you'd think, after years of playing these games, you could navigate your way around the user interface blindfolded, regardless of the language. Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, I understood what the big red button in the middle of the screen was for. And I sort of had a vague idea of what all of the various different labels were. But at the same time, it's still really confusing unless it's in a language you understand. So the whole not being able to speak Russian thing is actually quite an impediment when you're going to an event in Russia for Russians, presented in Russian, playing games that are in Russian. I mean, I've been to other events in Europe where English wasn't necessarily widely spoken, if at all. EpicCon in Frankfurt in 2016, for example, pretty much everything there was presented in German. Although if you walked up to somebody and kind of apologised and spoke English at them, generally speaking, they'd speak English back at you, but it was a cosplay convention. You don't need to speak German to appreciate the costumes that everybody's wearing, so the language really wasn't an issue. That's not really going to be the case at Wargaming Fest. The other reason why I really just couldn't be bothered with Wargaming Fest this year was, how can I put this? I love visiting foreign countries. I mean, I think it's just one of the best things you can do with your time. What I'm not such a fan of is the entire process of getting to and from those foreign countries. I love being there, but I don't like the travel there and back. I hate airports. I hate trains. I just... Oh, it's just such a ball ache. And, well, Moscow's a fair old distance away. Plus, I'm really just looking forward to spending my 2 weeks Christmas break doing as little as humanly possible. I used to have this issue when I was in the Navy. You'd be away for a 6-month deployment to somewhere foreign and sunny, or not necessarily sunny, but always somewhere foreign. And when you got back, the ship's company would go on 4 weeks leave. At the end of that 4-week leave period, everybody would come back to the ship with stories about where it was they went and what it was they did when they were on leave. Well, all of the single men would. All of the married men, they just spent the 4 weeks doing repairs around the house and building improvements to the house and basically doing whatever it was their wife told them to do. But the single men would come back with stories about all the adventures that they had in all these exotic places that they went to on their 4 weeks leave. Everybody except for me. People would say, what did you get up to? I said, I didn't get up to anything. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything. I thought, what the hell's wrong with you? Fellas, I have just spent 6 months away from home. When I finally get home at the end of that 6-month period, the last thing that I want to do is leave home again. I've got a PC, I've got an internet connection, I've got 6 months worth of games and patches and World of Warcraft content to catch up on. Or whatever the hell it was I happened to be playing at that time. I would get home, I would grab a drink, switch the PC on, and the only person who would see me for the next 4 weeks was the guy who delivered the takeaway food. Can you appreciate where I'm coming from here? I'm sure there are many of you listening to this video who can relate. But that was me. That's what I did. Go away for 6 months, come back, spend all of my leave in front of the PC. And I loved it. Occasionally I would go out and play some airsoft, but that was pretty much it. And that's kind of how I feel about this upcoming Christmas period. I just want to disappear for a couple of weeks and relax. I mean, you know what I'm like. I'm just as crap at taking time off as I am at anything else. Eventually, at some point during the 2-week Christmas break, I will get bored and I will toss a video or two out. Or I may find, I think I did this last year. What was the game? Inside, that was it. Started playing that. I thought, this is amazing. I have to show it to people. And did a full playthrough of the game when I was supposed to be taking a 2-week break. But you know, that's fine. I did it because, or I do it because I want to do it, not because, oh, I have to get today's video out. And I think my enthusiasm for the game showed in the video playthrough that I did. Was it last Christmas or the year? It must have been last Christmas. I can't remember. Whenever. Yeah, I'm sure you get the idea. I just want to sit down in front of a good game or a couple of good games, probably get some good footage during the process, which will appear in a video at some point after the Christmas break, but I don't want to have to worry about visas and passports and going to Russia and not understanding a word anybody's saying and, you know, just generally stuff like that. So while I am, of course, very, very grateful to be offered an all-expenses-paid trip to Moscow during the Christmas holiday period this year, I just really can't be bothered. I'm going to stay at home and play something instead. Anyway, how about we get some questions answered this week? Our first question comes from the Hunter. These questions, by the way, are from the Mingle with the Jingles channel on the Salt Mine Discord server. The Hunter says, hello, almighty overlord Jingles of the Salt Mines. Hello, Hunter. This isn't really anything to do with the games that you feature on your channel, more to do with the videos themselves. I want to make videos of my own featuring gameplay that I like to show to my friends and maybe even upload to YouTube if I feel like it. I definitely recommend that you do, the Hunter. But I'm having a bit of trouble, I think. When I record my games with OBS Studio at 1080p 60, with a decent amount of compression but without too much to make the video look bad, my files are still quite large. For every 10 minutes of content, I have about 1 gigabyte file size. I've calculated that for every second of recording, the file gets 1.6 megabytes larger. I want to know if this is normal or okay, and when you make your videos, what file size are they? Yeah, that sounds about right, actually. I mean, it used to be the case that I could put a 20-minute video together, and and it would come out at around about 2.5, 3 gigabytes. Those days are long gone, because it used to be the case that YouTube didn't support anything higher than 30 frames per second. Of course, with the switch to 1080p at 60 frames per second, and everybody demanding that videos be uploaded at 60 frames per second, well, you can imagine what that did to file sizes. At the moment, the World of Warships video playing in the background of this episode of Mingles with Jingles. It's a battle in the Massachusetts submitted by Yusrael, one of the community contributors. This particular raw video file is just over 13.5 minutes long, and it's just short of 5 gigabytes in size. You see, I have an NVIDIA graphics card, so I record using Shadowplay because I get minimal system overhead using that method. And when I record, it's at 1080p, 60 frames per second, with 100 megabits of bitrate. That gives me file sizes around about 5 times the size of what you're experiencing and thinking is big. Okay. So, yeah, if you're only getting 1 gigabyte for every 10 minutes of video that you record, that's actually not a lot. Now, of course, when I take that raw video footage and stick it into my editing software, and then I stitch it all together and put the commentary on it, and then I process it, I'm doing it with the same resolution, 1080p, with the same frame rate, 60 frames per second, but I drop the compression down to 40 megabits bitrate. See, that's how I would recommend you do it. Make sure that your source video material is as high quality as you can possibly manage. Crank that bitrate right up. I mean, we've already established that you're recording at 1080p with 60 frames per second, so you're not going to change that. But you can mess around with the bitrate to improve the video quality as much as you possibly can. So crank that bitrate up as high as you can comfortably manage. Doesn't really matter what size your raw video footage is, because you're going to edit it afterwards. And it's in the editing process, when you're cutting and trimming and adding transitions and putting a commentary on. Then when you come to process the edited video, then you can mess around with the bitrate to get the perfect balance between video quality and file size. Does that make sense? Because that's the way I do it. I mean, you're worried that your raw video files are too big. They're not. They're really not. They're actually not that big at all. In fact, bigger would probably be better. Crank that bitrate up. So the quality of the source material that you're messing around with in the editing software is as good as you can afford it to be. It's kind of like, I don't know if you ever heard cooks talking about when they're seasoning the food. You start off with no seasoning, and then you add a little bit of salt and you taste it. And if it needs more salt, you put more salt in. If it needs some garlic, you put some garlic in. What you cannot do if you start off with a load of salt and a load of garlic and you realise, shit, it's too much. You can't take it out. It's too late. Video editing is kind of like the opposite of that. Start with the best possible quality source video material, because what you can always do in the editing process is edit it down, lower the quality to get a file size that you're comfortable with. What you cannot do in the editing process is increase the quality. So you want to start off with the best quality video footage that you can, and that unfortunately means a really big file size. So hopefully that answered your question, and hopefully it was of some interest at least to anybody else who's maybe thinking about starting to upload their own videos onto YouTube. Next up, Trash Panda Jonas has a question that I cannot wait to answer. He says, "Hello Jingles. So today the Black Friday sale hit the stores, but also something else happened. Loot crates in the store got removed in Belgium, so I now can't participate in these offers and probably future ones as well." I presume he's talking here about World of Tanks and World of Warships Black Friday loot crates. "Do you think this is the right approach from Wargaming to just remove the crates, or should they try and find a way for people in Belgium to still be able to participate in these events? Thanks a lot, Jonas." Jonas, thank you for that question. Now, I don't 100% definitely know that what I'm about to tell you is the truth, but I'm pretty sure it is. I think that you can probably thank Electronic Arts for this. Do you remember the whole backlash associated with Star Wars Battlefront 2 when it first came out? Not just because the game was utterly terrible, but also because unless you were prepared to put some money down and buy some loot crates and hope you got lucky with the drops from the loot crates, you just couldn't really be competitive against anybody in multiplayer who had put money down for the loot crates and gotten lucky with the drops. Does everybody remember that? It wasn't that long ago. Well, Belgium, among other countries, decided that this amounted to gambling. And since it's illegal for anybody under the age of 18 to gamble in most countries around the world, well, in a lot of countries around the world, certainly in most of the European ones, if not all of them, this presented a bit of a problem and a bit of a reality check for big games publishers who have been stumbling over themselves in their effort to rip people off by stuffing their games full of as much pay-to-win shit like these loot boxes as they possibly could. And as a direct result of this, Blizzard, Valve and 2K Games have all disabled loot boxes in their games in Belgium. So how does this affect you, Jonas? Well, not directly, because World of Warships, World of Tanks, they're not published by Valve, Blizzard or 2K Games. But while Blizzard, Valve and 2K Games have all elected to obey the law in the countries where they've published their games, Electronic Arts hasn't. That's right, Electronic Arts is too big and important to bother with silly little things like obeying the law in the countries where it publishes its games. Never mind the fact that they're the ones that started all of this shit in the first place with Star Wars Battlefront 2. They're the ones challenging the law in Belgium. Electronic Arts have stated, just this April, that its games were developed and implemented ethically and lawfully around the world, and it didn't agree that its games could be considered as any form of gambling. Well, the Belgian Public Prosecutor's Office disagrees, and so, right now, they're collecting evidence and conducting a criminal investigation against Electronic Arts, and if they decide that there's a case to be made, Electronic Arts are going to be in court in Belgium. Now, after hearing all of that, Jonas, you may still be sitting there thinking, but I still don't understand what any of this has to do with me. I'm playing World of Tanks, or I'm playing World of Warships. These are wargaming titles. They're not Blizzard. They're not 2K. They're not Valve. They're not Electronic Arts. Well, yeah, that's all true. And while I personally don't think that the loot crates available for sale in World of Tanks and World of Warships are even anywhere near as bad as the kind of shit that was being peddled by Electronic Arts in Battlefront 2, and which they're still peddling in FIFA Soccer, do you really think wargaming wants to come within a country mile of the kind of shitstorm that Electronic Arts is currently finding themselves in? So while I don't 100% guaranteed know for sure that this is the reason why you can't buy these loot boxes in the wargaming store if your country of origin happens to be Belgian, but I'm reasonably sure that thanks to Electronic Arts being the twats that they are, wargaming just aren't prepared to risk touching this particular subject with a 10-foot long barge pole. It's just safer to not sell them. Sorry, but you can probably thank Electronic Arts for this. In fact, as a general rule of thumb in future, it's generally safe to assume that if anything that you like or enjoy in the gaming world has turned to shit, there's probably a fairly good chance that Electronic Arts were involved somewhere. Our next question, and this is another good question actually, and hopefully it'll be of interest more than just the person asking it. This comes from Salty Tea Party, and he says, "Hello Jingles. As a World of Tanks and World of Warships player, I noticed that promotions and codes that we receive from other community contributors like Quickie Baby and Circumflexes can only be redeemed in the North American or EU servers. Asian players like us can do nothing but watch. Do you know anything about this, and why is that? Please let us know, and thank you very much, Mighty Overlord." Yeah. Again, this is one of those things that I don't 100% guaranteed know the answer for, but I've got a pretty good idea. I noticed that you specifically mentioned people like Quickie Baby and Circumflexes. These are World of Tanks community contributors. They've played World of Warships. I streamed World of Warships with both of them at some point. But they're not World of Warships community contributors, so when they get stuff to give away, it's usually for World of Tanks, because that's what they play, and that's what they stream, that's what they do videos on. And despite the fact that both the games, World of Tanks and World of Warships, have their own regional servers, there's an EU server for both, a North American server for both, each with their own game client, there's a Russian server obviously, there's a Pan-Asian server, there's a Chinese server as well, at least for World of Tanks, but that's run kind of differently in China because of their laws. Wargaming don't operate the game themselves in China. They franchise it out to another company who run it for them in China. China's a completely separate case. But both of the games do have their own regional servers. It's not quite the same when it comes to the various different regional offices, however. There's an EU World of Tanks office based in Paris. There's a Russian World of Tanks office. There's a North American World of Tanks office. There's a Pan-Asian World of Tanks office. And each of these offices are responsible for running their own promotions and generating their own codes. And that's why, if you're following a North American World of Tanks streamer and he's got a code to give away, it's for North American players only. And it's why if you're following Quickie Baby or Circumflexes and they have codes to give away, it's usually for the EU only. That's not the case with World of Warships, because it doesn't have regional offices scattered around in the same locations as all the various different game servers. There's one global World of Warships office based in Prague in the Czech Republic. So if you're following a World of Warships streamer and they've got a code to give away, it usually works everywhere. And just to prove the point, if you check the link down below in the video description, there's a giveaway on Promo Simple where I've got a whole bunch of World of Warships codes to give away, thanks to making it through, well, I actually don't know if I've actually made it through the semi-finals of the ring yet. The results haven't yet been published. Hopefully I'll be in the finals. But for making it as far as the semi-finals, I was granted a whole bunch of codes. And I'm giving them away at the link down below in the video description. I'll be announcing the winners at some point later on in the week, but I guarantee you these codes work regardless of where you're playing World of Warships. The final question that I'm going to answer in this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles, and hopefully it will finally put this subject to bed, although who am I fooling? I know it won't. This question doesn't come from any one of you. There are a whole bunch of you who have been asking this question, both on the Discord server and in the comments section of every video I think I've uploaded for the last 6 months. Jingles, are you ever going to play The Witcher 3? Guys, I have played The Witcher 3, and yes, it is one of the best games ever made. CD Projekt Red are just amazing. I played the first Witcher game, which blew me away, but I didn't do any videos on it. I played the second one, which was quite good, but I didn't think it was quite as good as the first one, and I didn't do any videos on it, and I have played all the way through the third one, which was utterly amazing. One of the best games I've ever played, and no, I didn't do any videos on it. I'm unlikely to go back and play through the entire game again just to do videos on it, but there is another CD Projekt Red title coming out in the very, very near future that I am getting incredibly excited about, particularly after this weekend. I watched a, I think, 48-minute long gameplay reveal video on YouTube. Has anybody heard of Cyberpunk 2077? I played the original Cyberpunk 2020 when I was a kid back in high school. And when I say I played it, I mean the tabletop pen and paper role-playing game. And it was glorious. I read everything that William Gibson had ever written. I couldn't get enough of Cyberpunk. Shadowrun? Yeah, not too bad. But it wasn't Cyberpunk. CD Projekt Red, the developers of The Witcher, are doing a game set in the Cyberpunk universe. It's coming out next year, possibly as early as the first quarter. Nobody really knows for sure. CD Projekt Red certainly aren't saying. It's going to be available on PS4, Xbox, and PC, and it looks astonishing. I binge-watched this video. I'll put the link down below in the video description so you can see what it is I'm getting so excited about and why you should be getting excited as well. I binge-watched this video this weekend, got so excited I immediately grabbed Rita, stuck a cup of coffee in her hand, sat her down and made her watch it as well, at the end of which she got excited, and right now I am incredibly jealous of my future self because he's played this game, right, and I haven't. So I'm going to end this episode of Mingles with Mingles with Jingles by saying, yes, I have played The Witcher 3. I'm very sorry I never did a video series on it. But just you wait and see what they've got coming out next, because it looks absolutely incredible. Go and check out the video at the link down below in the video description. And on that bombshell, that is it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've all enjoyed it. And as always, take care. And I'll catch you next time.
Enemy cruiser destroyed.